What happens when we practice in the absence of equanimity? Can the practice and the spiritual attachment and skills own you? This will be our topic today in this episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts podcast. So, examples of skills that people often attach to in the beginning of the path would be things, say, in Tai Chi, like grounding or bouncing people, clairvoyance and sensory phenomena, sensory experience, Kundalini type experiences. When we develop the ability to manipulate energy, this is often very exhilarating and exciting. Of course, sensations of bliss, of ecstasy, when we have experiences of manifestation or of increased personal magnetism to the environment around us. People are attracted to us and brought into our field and our sphere. The first signs of prophetic vision, synchronicities, mental wandering is a really common one that people get excited about. It's often described as astral travel, but mental traveling or mental wandering and astral traveling are very different. Any type of dream yogas, lucid dreaming, people get excited about. And of course, downloads, spiritual downloads are often something that receive a lot of exhilaration when we are experiencing these things for the first time. So in the absence of equanimity, all of these things can own you. Probably the one that ruins the path for people most quickly would be attachment to the sexual practices. Very often a Tantra these days has been mislabeled or reduced to one very small aspect of the non-dual tantric paths, which is the sexual practice. And so all of these different skills and experiences can easily own the practitioner in the absence of equanimity, which is why really getting to know the stillness underneath your practices is so important. So what this comes down to, a big part of it, is what are we practicing when we're practicing? What are the mental, astral, and physical habits that we are engaging in within each practice? The energy that we're working with, whatever it is always bound to information. And that gives us the first little chunk of the energy, that trifecta of energy, information, and consciousness. Consciousness being a binding force. So energy and information need to be separated. And this is of crucial importance because this is a very important release. When we release energy and information from their cohesion, we're able to now discern the energetic substrate and the information that's baked into it. Why is this helpful? Well, if you've been doing a lot of training with different teachers on the spiritual path, unless the teacher is very, very developed, we could say their worst is very often subtly baked into the information that is being transmitted through the energy. Of course, there are very positive things that are being transmitted, positive information and reorganization and spiritual insight that's being transmitted. However, very often there are the shadow work that the teacher hasn't processed yet is baked into the transmission. This might be personal addictions, habits, etc. It's usually subconscious aspects of the teacher that gets baked into that information. So if we are able to discern the difference between the energy and the information, we're able to unbind those, and then we can proceed with more clear spiritual work and orientation to our own path in the absence of the subconscious shadow of the teacher. What we are oriented to within our own path is the guiding light. that we enter through, of course, the Akashic emptiness. So we have to break through the Akashic barrier so that we can then tune to more and more refined aspects of light for orientation and guidance. Okay, so let's say we take the modern tantric thing, which is a pedestalization of the sexual energy. And this is a grafting, an obscurity, where the practitioner can't perceive the difference between vital life force essence, right? This essence of vital light, and the habits that are associated with that of sexual action. So this practitioner will then hold aloft the experience of walking around exuding sexual energy, not vital light essence, but vital light essence empowering sexual habit. So people who walk into this type of field will feel their own sexual desires amplified. And what's funny is that anytime we are around an increase of energy, everything increases. So it's actually not uncommon to have your sexual desires amplified around someone who is higher energy, because more energy fills all the systems that are there. But if the information and the habits that are baked into this particular practitioner are specifically for that, then you're not actually allowing for the evolution of the person that's with you. You are reducing their experience with you to that specific information. So this is definitely an issue if that is, someone that you're studying with has the blinders on for that being the thing. Okay, so we have to learn to unbind the vital light essence from the habit of what that means, right? We feel an increase in energy, and the association of that particular vital light essence is, oh, this energy means sex. But if you don't engage in that, this is why in so many systems you take a break from sexual activity so you can actually learn about that energy, find some equanimity with it, and you'll start to realize that that energy is being run from. You're running away from that energy by emptying it through carrying out the sexual innuendos of mind as well as physical actions. Of course, it's not a bad thing. We just want to be free from the habits and be able to embrace that energy fully and completely as the vital light essence that it is. This information that's innately part of the vital light essence has much more to do with expansion, proliferation of life force, the birth of creative evolution. This is what's baked into that. Now, of course, this gets very, very easily, kind of like when you irrigate water out of a river or something, you take a bunch of that energy and you divert it to another path. So this energy gets diverted to the habits that we've built, the subconscious habits. So we need to understand these so that we can actually work with energy and more refined energy and higher octaves of electromagnetism on a goes without simply allowing this increased fuel to power up our habits. We want freedom and choice here. So once we have gotten to know the energy, we've developed equanimity from it, then we're free from it. Now, let's say you take another thing like spiritual bliss. This is a really common one. You're meditating, you feel this incredible spiritual bliss that's just beyond comprehension if you haven't felt that. If you stick to it and you grab that bliss will very often drain the hormonal reservoirs in the body, kind of like, you know, people talk about doing ecstasy and how the next day there's this big come down effect. And this happens with spiritual practice when you attach to the sensation, when you try to ride the dragon of bliss. This is when we are attaching to that, and then that energy sticks to the body and empties us of the reservoirs that create those experiences, or that at least fuel them. So this is why, again, we need to find equanimity. We need to engage that without grabbing it, so that we can, as a being of Akasha, allow these energies to work through us. This way we can work on all of the different skills and have them arise naturally as a byproduct of the path, without the entirety of the path being subsumed by that skill, without our habits being subsumed by that skill. Because once again, what you practice in the background of your practice is what you are becoming. So things like energy manipulation, let's say you're practicing how to manipulate energy in yourself, so then you learn how to manipulate the energy of others. What are you practicing every time you manipulate the energy of others? You're practicing disregarding that individual. You're practicing mentally and astrally violating your environment. And this isn't just people. This is this is subconscious. Every time you move around, you're walking through the world, you're trying to prove the efficacy of your practice to yourself by manipulating the energy of the environment, by experiencing incredible bliss all the time and then creating that, trying to force that, by experiencing coarse sexual energy all the time, by experiencing the abilities of, you know, mental wandering or, you know, spiritual downloads, and then trying to fabricate downloads that are coming through so you get to feel good about yourself and your practice. So these things are worth paying attention to so that we don't get stuck. We can slide through the Akashic like transport system, the Akashic bridge, and continue our work. So equanimity frees the mind from identifying with these habits and allows one to work from the Akasha. Because you're working from the Akasha in any of these skill sets, what happens naturally in the Akasha is, well, you train for it as well, but the crown opens, the soles of the feet open, and you get this, we could say like a polarization that occurs, and polarization increases the amount of energy that can flow through. That polarization of energies is able to pass through the Akashic conduit, the Akashic bridge that you are, which allows for profound transformation to flow through us. It's profound transformation. It flows through us unimpeded because of the Akasha that we're working from. And it is powered up by profound energy. Once again, the eros of sexual energy, that strong, vital light essence beneath the habit. Once that energy doesn't mean sex, once it means what it is, which is an incredible amount of creative light essence energy, this birthing power, this is suddenly at our disposal to empower our practice, to empower transformation, to empower surrender and spiritual growth. So that is at the essence of, say, the sexual practices, is you are finding deep equanimity and working those from the space of that empowering your union with divinity, universal force and light and emptiness, not to get your rocks off, which is where people very often, fall by the wayside. Because it's so easy to, like, it makes so much sense, right? Why would you not want your deepest desires to be the doorway to infinity? And then you go, oh, well, forget the sacredness aspect of this, forget the emptiness aspect of this. Let's just go with the pleasure aspect of this. And it's very easy to see how everything gets subverted to that skill or to that experience. So, powers to sustain emptiness. You end up being empowered by these energies to sustain deeper and deeper realization. Deeper and deeper realization of more profound resonance with more refined aspects of infinity and light consciousness. This sacred silence, this stillness, is the doorway, the bridge to the light bodies, to the light bodies as they exist at so many levels of refinement. So if we are being consumed by desire for power, by desire for energetic manipulation, by desire for bliss and ecstasy in more of the spiritual sense, by desire for Kundalini experience, the buzz, the shaking, all the downloads. This is a big one. You get this through flows of massive amounts of information and inspiration. If you're consumed by that, you'll go off on these tangents. So underneath all that is the Akasha, which allows for the organizing and orienting flow of the light bodies. So because of this, we are always looking at doctrine. There's no doctrine imposed externally, and there's no doctrine imposed or clung to internally. Attachment to any of the skills or any of the experience would be internal doctrine examples. So we practice, we acknowledge through deep personal experience what's happened in the practice. And that acknowledgement has to be carried out from an equanimous place so that we can actually see as clearly as possible, under the guidance of your highest light bodies, from that place, what has gone on. Then you can, from that place, refine the method through deep prayer. That is what allows us to find those deepest aspects of emptiness, that sacred silence, and those higher light bodies. That is what organizes the refinement of method, not necessarily the ego that is grasping to further manipulative abilities or power-based abilities or self-referential validation, right? And then you repeat. You don't have a doctrine for your own proclivities. There's no, what do you call it, like a sacred cow there. There's no internal doctrine, which means the only doctrine is emptiness and perception. How the light of perception and the personal Akashic consciousness, as it recognizes itself in infinity, that's the light of perception that is playing through that, how that carries itself out. This is where it all always will come back to, is the essence underneath all of this, okay? So practice in the absence of equanimity leads to all kinds of damage that we do to ourselves, as well as damage that we impose on the environment around us. Doctrines that we have internally are doctrines that we impose externally. And you'll notice this very often in teachers who are at a beginning stage of their path, that their greatest joy will be to tell you what your problem is, And then if you look past that and go, hey, you know what your problem is? Your problem is you're not me. And if you notice that, maybe that's some karma you need to work out in your own past, so that's why you're there. If it's something that you've worked out, maybe you want to go somewhere else. So be aware of what you're experiencing in yourself, what you're experiencing in others. If the doctrine that someone else is trying to impose on you is that your doctrine should be them, that's not offering you through Akasha access to your guiding light bodies and that refinement through that path. Your goal is always to be offering yourself freedom and liberation from your personal doctrines, from environmental doctrine, and the only orientation is to refinement of truth through your highest and most refined light bodies and ascension. This requires deep practice in equanimity so that you can traverse the Akashic bridges as they exist in so many infinite layers and dimensions. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your time. For training, please check out the courses and retreats that you can find on the website, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.